Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are, whoever you are, folks. Welcome to this week's edition, the final edition in 2020 of Full Fat Spoiler Chat. And boy, do we have something to spoil. It is Wonder Woman 1984. So everybody who's already popped into the chats, if the description of what this show was, what its topic was, wasn't clear enough, we will be talking about Wonder Woman 1984 in depth with absolutely no restriction on spoilers. So if we have to talk about what happens in the middle, what happens at the beginning, what happens at the end, and how that affects our opinion of things about the movie, we're going to talk about it. If you haven't seen it and you hate spoilers, I bid you adieu, or I strongly recommend that you bounce out, as the kids once said. If you don't mind spoilers, or if you have seen it, stay around and let's chat about it. So I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber. I am first-person shooter on the Facebooks and Burley_Adopter on Twitter and a couple other places. Joining me tonight is, let's see, I think we'll start with the only person without the crazy background but a beautifully decorated apartment, Ashley, if you would.
Hello, I'm Ashley Lauren Rogers. I'm a playwright and a just all-around weird artist based out of Brooklyn. You can also check out my stage combat-oriented fighting league that I started that is doing some weird things in self-isolation called Scowl at scowlfight.com.
Cool. And the man who started all of this more than 10 years ago, Manny, if you would.
Hey, my name is Manny. And I do things at Nerd Caliber. I am the video editor and the founder of Nerd Caliber.
There you go. And the one smart enough to think of a good background for this. I could put the space one back up. Like the Hall of Justice. Yes. I love it. Let's see. Welcoming to the show before we get into this on YouTube. Nakase 2.0, Nakose. I'm probably horribly messing up your name. Hello. Kawaii Hero, sup. Sophia DeCheco, hello and goodbye, apparently. Kenma Kozume, hello. Pablo Perez, hello. Kawaii Hero. Oh my god, it's Kenma. Apparently you know each other. That's wonderful. Welcome to the show. Antonio da Silva Coelho, welcome to the show. And Kenma, goodbye. So, there we go. And I don't think we've got anybody yet on the Twitches, and nothing yet on the Facebooks. All right, so Wonder Woman 1984. The movie is a sequel to the wonderful first Wonder Woman movie, also starring Gal Gadot, also directed by Patty Jenkins, based, of course, on the DC comic book character. One of the what they call the big trilogy in the DC: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and the movie was shot principally in 2018, screened in early 2019. That led to some reshoots. It was scheduled to come out, and then of course the COVID happened, and finally it hit theaters and streaming service on HBO Max on Christmas Day. So it's out there for everybody to see it if you've got HBO Max or you dare to go to a theater. Lolbit, welcome to the show. And that's pretty much the background of Wonder Woman. There's a ton more to talk about Wonder Woman's background, but so many other people have done it in so many better venues or would do a better job than I would here. So if you really don't know anything else about Wonder Woman except that it was a movie a few years ago and this is a sequel, go to YouTube and type in Wonder Woman history or something and get some of those wonderful stories about, the really interesting origin of the character. It's a subtle way to put it. So our first topic, or our first aspect that we're going to address, as we do in this, is we're going to talk about likes and dislikes. And there's a lot to talk about in one of those two aspects. So I'm going to start with Ashley. And whichever one you want to start with, like or dislike, hit us with some of the things.
Yeah, so I'll start positive with the likes. A lot of the action sequences were fantastic. Like honestly, that White House fight scene is one that I will constantly like show to people about like, hey, this is a really good cinematic fight scene. It's dealing with a number of different plot elements all at once. You are following it very easily, and we are seeing both the intention of one character to get away, uh, but in order to do that, she's trying to harm people. And then the other character, Wonder Woman in that case, literally trying to stop those people from being harmed. And I love that scene. Um, and then there are some issues with the Mad Max style car scene in Egypt that have been spoken about a lot on the internet. But I will say, as far as just like an action sequence, it was a darn good action sequence.
Yeah.
So for me, like
I would compare it maybe a little bit more to the indie Nazi chase scene also in Egypt than sort of Mad Maxy, but both are valid.
I mean, the sheer cartoonishness of it was why I thought of like a lot of the Mad Max. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, how did they do this? Wow, they like some of it was like actually filmed, a lot of it was CGI, but like some of it was actually done as like practical effect, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
I will say, like immediately with the dislikes, I did not like how the cartoonishness of a lot of these action sequences didn't visually fit. It felt very like late 90s to me, as opposed to a piece of now.
Yep.
It felt like Xbox One or PS4 Cyberpunk 2077 at times, but
It felt like the first Fantastic Four.
yeah. And like, hey, I'm not going to completely knock something for that. That's fine. My major dislikes were with how the story was constructed, because it felt very much like it wasn't.
Yes.
And it felt kind of like the same issue that I had with whatever that last new Star Wars movie was in the main canon, because I can never remember the names of them.
Episode 9.
Episode 9.
Yeah.
It felt very similar to that, where it felt like it was a lot of people by committee saying this needs to happen. Oh, nope, you got to change that. No, that's not going to work. Oh, hey, I see that you had that. Oh, I don't know, people didn't like that. And so, like, it felt like a series of studio notes.
Yep.
And because of that, a lot of the real story kind of got bogged down. And then I guess like the final major dislike, and there are other things that we're going to talk about. I don't know if I'm ready for whatever they were trying to do with the Trump analogy. I don't know if it's because I'm too close right now and it was like really worrisome going throughout this entire election process. Partially because Pedro Pascal did a fantastic job with this character. I don't think it needed the Trump. I don't think it needed to be so on the money with that. And because it was so on the money with so much of what it was trying to do, I'm not ready to look at a Trump-like character in a sympathetic lens, and that's what this movie wanted in a lot of ways.
Yes. I'll get into that aspect, the sympathetic lens aspect of it too. I think that's a big problem with this movie. Yeah. Manny, likes if you have any, and dislikes if you have any. Of course you have any.
I'll try to be brief, because there's a lot of points that I liked about it, a lot of points that I didn't like about it. I liked, so when before I watched this movie, I started seeing comments already that people didn't like it, and I hurried to watch this right away before I get spoiled and everything.
Yeah.
And after watching it, I liked it, but I noticed kept seeing a lot of negative comments, and then it made me think a little bit about like, okay, before I start thinking about why they didn't like it and why, and maybe try to defend or debate about it, I started to decide, okay, why did I like this movie? And I realized there's 3 reasons why I like this movie. Pedro Pascal, I think he's my favorite actor in this movie. I thought he killed it as Maxwell Lord. When the idea that this theme of him losing his Hispanic identity to become more American or white in order so he could be successful. It's a theme that I resonated with. It's something that between myself, my family, and friends, something that we've struggled and with and debated about. Um, the father and son aspect between Pedro Pascal and his son, and Maxwell Lord and his son, I should say, and how he had to sacrifice work in order to make his life better by sacrificing time with him in order to make that weird catch 22 that I related with a lot. Um, and let me see, looking at my notes real fast. Loss. The fact that Diana Prince was still grieving still over Steve Trevor. I related that very much, especially since to me, like Steve Trevor and Diana Prince, it's very much like to me like Lois Lane and Clark Kent. If Superman lost Lois Lane, I could see that even 50, 100 years later, he would still be mourning over her. Because they're pretty much in comic mythology, they're deep hair.
Yeah.
So that's what really resonated with me. After thinking about it and thinking about the movie some more and reading different criticisms from other people, there's things that I realized like, okay, wait, this movie is very problematic. Definitely the fact that this weird story. Okay, so I don't get this. So you have Wonder Woman lassoing lightning bolts across the sky, which is great. I'm okay with that. But Chris Pine, they had to make a story how he had to possess another human being without their consent. So and then they I'm assuming they had to have sex. I guess without this
Clearly,
person.
they did.
And then at the end, where like, okay, this he's out of it, but hey, they're gonna hook up anyway. It's actually a very 80s movie thing too. You know, there's a lot of problematic movies in the 80s that are like that, and that to me is a really big like. That would be my reason why I would never watch this movie. That's because of that storyline. It just bothers me way too much.
So just another, I didn't know this until I think it was Movie Bob's first, he's doing two videos about this movie. His first one, that actor who played the person that Steve Trevor took over is apparently a regular in Hallmark movies. Like Hallmark, specifically Hallmark Christmas movies. And that tag bit at the end is such a Hallmark Christmas moment. It's almost like they lifted it right out of one of those movies. Even putting in one of their regular actors. It just... And once he pointed that out, I went, oh my God, you're right. So, sorry, go ahead.
I wasn't really happy with the depiction of the Middle East and the characters they portrayed from there too. This is such a missed moment for Wonder Woman. There was no fan service barely whatsoever in this movie. You could have first of all, this has the Spider-Man 3 syndrome. Too many villains, way too many villains. You either Cheetah or Maxwell Lord. Choose one. You know, and with
I'm going to argue that point in my turn.
Okay, all right. Because with Maxwell Lord, with the wish, they could have he could have maybe brought in. It could have been a inside joke, bringing like members of the JLI, the Justice League International, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, or even in the Middle East, Kondak, which is a fictional Middle Eastern country that DC has made, which allows them to explore different things.
Right.
And so, there's a Black Adam movie coming out. So there's no mention of it. Why couldn't they had it there? It would have made more sense because even like some of the dress or the, I don't know, it doesn't seem like this fit anywhere in the Middle East. Like culturally, fashion, government, nothing like that made sense to me. Because of that, I had trouble sympathizing with the country because to me this doesn't make sense to me. This part of the country this part of the world doesn't exist.
Yeah. There certainly was nothing like that in 1980s Egypt, as far as a strongman government of that type. Just nope.
Yeah. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I could go on a bit, but but I feel like this suffers from Spider-Man 3 syndrome a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Kristen Wiig did not get a big part of this at all, which I was hoping to see more of.
That was so weird. Like the whole thing with Kristen Wiig, like she's being given this character that's turning into a cheetah, and I get that like she's maybe trying to do a different type of character. And honestly, I really applauded her for being someone who isn't a Kristen Wiig type in this. But it kind of just turned her into a plank of wood for a
Yeah.
lot of it. It was weird because I liked it because it did subvert my like, oh, I'm expecting Kristen Wiig, but it's just like, well, why is she here? Like, what is she doing? She's it's weird.
So what I liked about it is that, and getting back to what Ashley said, a lot of the performances are really good. Kristen Wiig's character is written terribly. Kristen Wiig doing the character was really good, and I would love to see her do more stuff where she doesn't have to be the adorkable science nerd. She was very sexy, very powerful as she started transitioning from just Barbara Minerva into the person that would become Cheetah. And that was like you said, it was a revelation. That was like, wow, all right, she's got the chops, she can do this. So let's see her do more of it. Pedro Pascal is awesome as always. Scenery chewing, like the scenery was crackers, and it did a pretty good job of making you feel sympathetic towards a character. And I think this is one of the problems with. Well, I'll get into the sympathy in a second. Other things that I liked about it is I also liked, for the most part, the action, even though I don't think it made any sense or much sense for where it was placed. It came across a lot more like just set action pieces that had to happen that were then done very well. The whole fight, and I agree, it wasn't just a Daredevil hall fight where it's like, let's see a bunch of people, brutally beat the crap out of each other, including the hero. It was, you've got, one mission and you've got another mission that is counter to that first person's mission, and let's see, ultimately how either side succeeds in this. Was anything else I liked about it? That was really kind of it. So again, mostly the cast, and again, Chris Pine was fine as Steve Trevor. A reduced role from the first movie, obviously, but he was basically Chris Pine. Dislikes. So the story structure or lack thereof. And I think pretty clearly this was, again, as Ashley mentioned, production notes or studio notes. This was Warner Brothers DC content. Absolute kryptonite is studio interference. They do it all the time. They did it with an understanding because of Zack Snyder's family problems. They did it to Justice League. They did it to Suicide Squad. We have no idea what Suicide Squad would have looked like. It wouldn't have looked like what we got. Whether we would have liked the probably more street smart, urban actiony, almost cop feel kind of movie that director would have given us, because Training Day and so on were his products. At least it would have been a coherent, movie as opposed to something that just reeks of studio interference. Wonder Woman 1984, to me, reeks of studio interference. And Manny brought up that good point. We've got an established in-world ability to do literally almost anything. Wonder Woman can ride friggin' lightning with a lasso. The lasso is kind of a MacGuffin or a Deus Ex Machina tool. It does just about whatever she wants it to do. We've established that the wishes from the Dreamstone, or in this case Max Lord as the Dreamstone by the time it comes around to this, can literally create gigantic stone walls out of nothing to separate some people in one part of Egypt from some people in another part of Egypt. And yet it can't resurrect Steve Trevor. It has to bring him back in the body of somebody, which then gives us all of these consent problems. So here's my
magical rock that can make wishes.
It's a magical rock that can make wishes that was made by a god. So here's my problem with the sympathy thing, and my problem with Manny's, my disagreement with Manny's statement about it having the Amazing Spider-Man, the Spider-Man 3 problem of too many villains, is that I don't think it has a single villain. I think you have Maxwell Lord, who's just a penny ante cheap ass con man who's just punching way over his weight all the way through the movie, from his childhood in poverty up to trying to create this pyramid scheme, oil scam thing, who gets duped by an evil trickster god's toy. Exactly the same thing with Barbara Minerva. She's a scientist. She absolutely did not believe that her wish was going to come true. She didn't maliciously make a wish to screw up her life and Diana's. She went up for the wish. Well, God, I wish I could be like Diana because she's amazing. And this evil trickster god that we never see becomes the villain and makes that happen. You've got two characters that are, in some cases, less problematic or less easily understandable as villains than Otto Octavius in Spider-Man 2, who was one of the most sympathetic and tragic villains, in comic books. But he still, you could understand, it was his hubris, his, pride, his idea that he could capture the power of the sun, and his willingness to use all kinds of crazy-ass technology to do it, is what brought him to Doc Ock. Barbara Minerva is a scientist. Presented to us 100% as a scientist, looks at this rock and goes, wishes. Okay, well, I wish I was as cool as Diana. And she gets tricked. While Maxwell Lord's decision to make a wish is based on the fact that he, at that point, believes the stone works, it's still not malicious in any way more than he wants to be able to make his cons work. And then he finds out that he's screwed, that he actually has to make other people's wishes once he becomes the Dreamstone. He is also a victim of the real villain, which we never see. It's whatever this evil trickster god is. So I don't think there's any villains in this movie. And that's a problem. In the first movie, we had German scientists gassing civilians and the god of war. And in this movie, we've got a penny ante con man who isn't even as bad as Trump by any stretch of the imagination as a con man, and a scientist who gets tricked into becoming an evil thing. And even then, it's not really evil. Yeah. So that's one of my biggest problems with the construction of the movie is that, it didn't really have any villain for us to worry about Diana or want to see really brought down. I mean, we kind of wanted to see Maxwell Lord stopped because, end of the world and all that stuff. But it wasn't like he was doing it because he was evil. He was doing it because he made the mistake of wishing on this rock, and it turned him into what Diana probably could have predicted, but nobody else could have. The only person who made a wish with clear knowledge of the potential problems of that is Diana. She wished for Steve Trevor, knowing that she was looking at a rock that, even though at that time she didn't know, she hadn't seen the god language inside, but she had a pretty clear idea that this was probably something mystical. So that's one of my big problems with the story construction. And here's my theory about why that happened. So, things we do know are real. The movie was filmed primarily in 2019. It was screened for people in in 2018. It was screened for people in early 2019. The screening reactions were bad. It reshot through a lot of 2019, and then COVID hit, and its new schedule got thrown out the window. My guess is that, and this is pure speculation on my part. We know that was true. You can go look it up. This part, who knows? Given Patty Jenkins' background, I think I'm right. I think this movie originally was a movie about loss and the potential of recovery from loss, and Barbara Minerva and Diana were going to be romantically entangled. Were romantically entangled in the screenings. I think Maxwell Lord was probably a secondary villain of minor importance, brought in basically to be the conduit through which the wishing happens. And I think Diana makes the wish to bring Steve Trevor back, and that makes Barbara Minerva supremely jealous. And I think at some point in the screening, she killed Steve Trevor.
Ooh.
And that was what the audience reacted badly to. That Diana would find somebody else. I don't think they reacted necessarily to the fact that it was a lesbian relationship, but that she would find somebody else so easily, and then that person would then turn around and become incredibly jealous and kill Steve. Though I don't know that's true, that would explain why Barbara's motivation makes no sense whatsoever in the movie. But it would make sense if she was a jealous lover. And why Steve's resurrection had to be, I think, retconned in the reshoots to be just his spirit taking over another body, so that there wasn't a killing that was going to happen afterwards. That you notice that when he disappears, this just absolutely destroyed me when I saw it in the movie. She walks away around a corner, and you hear his voice off screen, "I will always love you," and she says, "I will always love you," and then says, "I renounce my wish," and you never see him go. You never see Steve Trevor's return to not being alive, and Patty Jenkins is too good a director to make that dumbass mistake of having something that emotionally important happen off screen. So, anyway, so that's my theory. I think that
release the Jenkins cut.
Release the Jenkins cut. God damn yes, please. Patty Jenkins made Monster, one of the most brilliant, horrific, painful looks at a dysfunctional lesbian relationship. And then made this? Harry, welcome to the show. Welcome back. Again, Wonder Woman 1984, we're spoiling the hell out of it. I probably just did. You've been in there for a few minutes. So, anyway.
I just kind of responding to that, and I know that it's more just speculation, but I wonder if, because there is a really good chemistry between Kristen Wiig, and again, like I realized, like in the beginning, I was very much like shooting on Kristen Wiig, but at the same time, like there is really good chemistry there between Gal Gadot and Kristen Wiig, and I don't know that I necessarily see them like, but the jealous lover thing is absolutely there throughout with the two of them, and the jokes in queer Twitter were constantly like, "Hey, this is clearly there," like, "Oh yeah, now she's jealous."
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but I don't know if she would have actually put that in. My theory, and again, like we're talking speculation here, my theory is that Maxwell Lord was probably a lot less likable, especially in the ending. I don't know that he necessarily had the redemption that he had.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a lot of retconning that they needed to do for that, which is why a lot of the message of learning in the beginning of like that beginning part of learning, and the learning was more for Max Lord, didn't make too much sense. So for me, I wonder if maybe a lot of that test shoot was like, well, we're going hard on Trump, so we can't go hard on Trump.
Now, that's a good point. That could be too. I might be wrong with that. Max might have been the actual real evil. There may have been a redemption arc for Barbara, in that Cheetah winds up fighting with Wonder Woman to bring down a really, really evil Max Lord. That would make sense as well. In which case, again, you would have had a villain. You know, you would have had somebody that makes sense, and it would have been a better story for Barbara Minerva. It just, so much of this movie, parts of it don't jibe with other parts so badly. And let me back up one. I don't hate this movie. I don't think it's a terrible movie. I think it's somewhere between meh and bad. My biggest problem is the fact that Patty Jenkins is amazing. And, you know, to miss this hard is kind of shocking. Here's what. So I looked up the IMDb. The first movie, Wonder Woman, was written by of all people, Zack Snyder, somebody named Jason Fuchs, who's got like minor writing credits and nothing, he's actually an actor. And Alan Heinberg. And Alan Heinberg is the only one credited with writing the screenplay of the first movie. Alan Heinberg is a TV writer. He has written for most, of your super popular adult dramas, and a lot of them. The O.C., Gilmore Girls, Scandal, Grey's Anatomy. That's his background, which means he knows how to write dialogue and drama. Wonder Woman 1984 was written by Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns. Now, Jenkins wrote Monster, and Jeff Johns has written a lot of both comic and TV work as well. And somebody named Dave Callahan, who is credited as the only third screenplay writer, which means he only came in to write dialogue and screenplay stuff. Dave Callahan has written a bunch of the movies in the Expendables series and the original Doom.
That was a movie.
That explains so much. If I were to guess, I would say Callahan was brought in after that test screening to punch up this movie and just hosed it. Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame.
Wow.
Jenkins is a great writer. Jeff Johns is also a great writer. I mean, his JSA, his I'm looking at my comic collection over here. His Green Lantern. It's just they're excellent books. And Jenkins has written great movies, directed great movies. So it makes sense because this movie does feel like it's not glued together right. If that makes sense, it just feels like pieces of things, and it just never really sticks together right.
Yep.
I mean, as much as I enjoyed the scenes with Chris Pine and Gal Gadot, that to me it was a little bit too long and a little bit too weird. Like the fireworks, that was the point when I looked. I was like, how long is this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
2 hours. 2 hours and 31 minutes is how long it is.
Yeah. Why? This could have been a tight 90.
Yeah, exactly.
If you think about the actual things that move character development or plot along, and the action scenes, and there is a tagged on at the beginning, admittedly very fun action scene that has nothing to do with the movie whatsoever, except possibly setting up the I think corrected or adjusted theme of the movie to be the sort of cheating, lying, etc. Is bad, and that's the only way you can save the world, is get people to understand that they should, renounce their wishes, which has nothing to do with cheating or lying. Anyway, so it doesn't make any sense. So you got that. You've got the mall fight. You've got the action scene in Egypt, and then the fight in the hallway before you get to the big finale. Big finale. The finale is one of the saddest, weakest bits of action. The Chekhov's gun rule is completely violated in this movie by having, at the very beginning, they set up the golden armor, and at the end it does absolutely nothing. It saves Diana from getting a little bit knocked around by Cheetah, and then apparently the most effective armor part of the wings are like, okay, well, screw it, let's, now let's go, mano a mano. They make this huge point at the beginning about this stuff. Diana mentions it at some point, to Steve Trevor, and then they just sort of, now we get a chance to show it to people because we mentioned it, and here's the Easter egg that we set up at the beginning that you all love from the Kingdom Come comics that Alex Ross painted and never got paid for its use in this movie.
Yeah. Which, if whatever that random beam of light that they didn't really explain that Maxwell Lord walks into and needs to walk into for reasons unknown other than the script says so.
Well, so that's how the particles go out and touch people.
Is this a metachlorines thing?
Oh,
I don't understand. Okay.
I mean, J.J. Abrams' science is bad. That was atrocious.
It's like, what is, like, okay. Because, like, literally the entire time, and we just did Tootsie on Is It Transphobic? And there's this whole moment in the beginning where Dustin Hoffman, and, you know, fuck Dustin Hoffman, but, like, in the moment where, like, he's like, all right, cross stage left. Why? Because you would look better, more people can see you if you cross stage left. I'm dying. It's like, okay, can you die stage left? It's like, and it's just like, it feels like that was like the conversation that must have been like, why am I walking into this light? It's like, because
the script says you do.
Because, yeah, it would be a really good moment. It's like,
Oh, so, and we're kind of nitpicking at this point, which is kind of a bummer because, you know, that's a bad decision from production design or directing or whatever. You know, the lack of 80s music is a bad decision from production design.
Like, the score was great. Sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I agree.
The score was fantastic.
Yeah.
But it was not 84.
Right.
Like,
it wasn't anachronistic. They didn't put in stuff from the 90s or anything. They just didn't, as almost every movie of its type did, is actually use period accurate music to set the mood instead of just, you know, baggy mom jeans and, you know, and pastel colored sweaters, which is, you know, what they used in the mall.
Let's power walk with our leg warmers. Yep.
Now, I think maybe that was again a conscious decision because back when this movie was filming in 2018, Captain Marvel had just come out and was set in 1990s and used, as Marvel likes to do, music cues to put you in the place. And maybe Warner Brothers went, hey, we don't want to be compared to Captain Marvel. Again, that's all speculation. Or maybe it was literally they just, you know, I don't know, with all these reshoots now, we can't afford the license to, you know, Culture Club.
But it's Warner Brothers. So they have this Warner Music, so they should have a sizable library of music.
You would think. Geez, I think Sade was on. Hold on a second. Hide a dumb message.
In the 80s, was anyone like watching their kids? Because seemed like all the kids were like,
nobody's watching their kids.
Like in the mall or in the Middle East, no one's watching the kids play.
Exactly.
That'll be fine. Just you know, kids are indestructible in the 80s. I was a kid in the 80s. I was on the playground equipment. I'm fine. But it was all metal and jagged and spirally, and it all wanted to kill you. But yeah, you know, you turned out fine. I will say, and especially bringing up Captain Marvel has brought up a thing that I'm having an issue with this movie that I didn't really bring up yet, and that I'm having with a lot of movies out right now, particularly female-centered movies, which is that, at least like with like talking about Captain Marvel, there was maybe one moment where there was a misogynist dude who was like, hey, you suck, and then she beat him up and took his motorcycle.
Yep.
And there it was. With this, it very much felt like the whole thing was a Hollywood idea of lashing out past Me Too. Like this idea of like, we want to give you what you want, so we want to show you that this woman is going to beat up this man who's trying to assault her, and I don't want to see that. And I say that as like, all right, you know, like as a woman, as someone who's queer, as someone who, it's just, I don't want to see a Hollywoodized idea of what you think I want to see from this. I want these men, these high-profile abusers, these people who have been abusers, who particularly in like a movie like this, we're seeing to be high or low profile abusers, to be held accountable. And literally by having Maxwell Lord be a Trump analog and not be held accountable, they're literally not giving us that, but they're giving us, oh, well, luckily Tina beat up that guy that tried to assault her before, you know, not at the time, but, you know, later she found him and then she beat him up. And it was just like, what is that?
Right.
Like,
can I add? So when Cheetah beat up that guy in the street, and I always hate when movies do this, when suddenly someone comes out like, what are you doing? What you're doing is wrong. You're beating up this person. It's almost dead. And I don't know, I'm like, is he dead? Good. Did that happen? Because I had no sympathy for that that person they got beat up, none whatsoever. So when I see that, I almost like saying, "Oh, you went too far. You know, how dare you strike back?" And
she didn't go far enough. The guy was still breathing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that brings us to what normally we would talk about: tone of the movie, themes, messages, and so on. And I'm not sure we have enough time to cover all of the potential messages because they didn't have one, or they had 7, or anyway. Before we get into that, I want to reiterate to your point about the idea of this being sort of how Hollywood thinks women want to see men treated post-Me Too, or at least abusers treated post-Me Too. I think so much of this movie is about how Hollywood sees things. That's a problem with the depiction of the 80s. This looks like a movie's version of what it thinks the 80s looked like, as opposed to people who lived through the 80s making a movie set in the 80s. Stranger Things looked way more like the 80s, because it didn't just rely on, malls and weird clothes. And I think that's so true with almost everything about this. This is a Warner Brothers movie made by Warner Brothers studio executives that unfortunately lands at the feet of Patty Jenkins, the director. But is there a coherent or at least an overriding tone to this movie? Is there a theme? Is there a message? Are any of those things consistent, and did they even try? Ashley?
Don't cheat, and it's not cheating if he's in someone else's body? That's a horrible message that I feel like it was telling me.
Yeah. Theme or tone or anything?
It was all over the place. Like, honestly, even in the fight scenes, again, we were kind of talking about that. It didn't know if it wanted the really cool, and I'll reference another comic book movie. It didn't know if it wanted the cool Daredevil thing or if it wanted to do the cartoony thing. Even Birds of Prey, to talk about a piece that is in the DC canon, that is in the DC Universe canon. Birds of Prey did a really good job of mixing tone in a way that it was a cohesive piece.
Right.
And there were cartoonish moments. Canary was able to shriek, and there were moments of CGI, and it felt like it was part of the piece. And I think that a lot of people immediately say, you just love Marvel movies. And ultimately, I feel like everything about this was just so all over the place. It didn't have anything to connect it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree 100%. The tone was, I think that when they said it was set in 1984, I think that Warner Brothers thought, hey, this would be great. This is going to be a campy Wonder Woman movie.
Okay.
Or maybe even Patty Jenkins was on board with that and gave them a sort of a campy Wonder Woman 1984 movie with a 1980s version of Donald Trump and a cool, sexy lesbian relationship, and then nobody liked it. And so it became, now we got to get a little bit more, there's going to be bigger stakes and consequences, but they kept an awful lot of the cheesy, campy tone, which meant instead of it being a massive shift away from the serious, the war to end all wars darkness of the first movie with wonderful comic elements to something that I think they were hoping was going to be a little bit Thor Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy. And it wound up not being either. Then they squeeze in the awful rom-com stuff like the jet through the fireworks and Jesus.
I'm glad they gave us the invisible jet. As much as I'm crapping on this movie, I'm glad they gave us the invisible jet. I'm glad it was just very quick, and then suddenly, now she could fly. Because
nitpicky. Oh my God, how are we going to get to Egypt? Oh, let's take a jet. That don't they remember that the reason that in-air refueling was invented was because little jets like that can't cross the Atlantic?
It's invisible, Rodney. It's got invisible gas. Invisible gas burns differently.
Remember, no, it's a normal jet that they get out of that history yard that she makes invisible with magic that suddenly she has.
Yeah, but the gas is now invisible.
Oh, okay.
It burns differently.
Which it doesn't burn the same.
Now.
Okay,
so, yeah,
I get it.
It's an invisible burning. It's
yeah.
It's different. See, I'm on board for that. Like, that's the thing. These are the things I'm on board for. I'm not on board for Wonder Woman has sex with someone in someone else's body.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm here for magical wish stone makes boyfriend appear. Like,
it would have made so much more sense. Anyway, I'm sorry, Manny. Tone or theme or message out of this movie?
I know I mentioned earlier about like the different things I liked, and it sort of overall this movie was kind of like watching the three latest Star Wars movies in one. All different ideas and things, and just some sort of mess afterwards. It is a shame. The problem with Wonder Woman, in my opinion, nowadays is that her rogues gallery needs to be developed, because we think of, you could bring a new Lex Luthor into any Superman TV show, movie, and Lex Luthor is a powerful character. Same thing with Batman, Joker. Any person playing the Joker, being in a Batman movie, doesn't matter who's playing him. That's going to be a tough character to beat. But Wonder Woman doesn't really have anything like that. She already took care of Ares. Exactly. In the last movie. So I was hoping they would build more up with the Cheetah. Because the Cheetah origin in the comic books is really amazing, really. But I feel like there's just too many things going on. Even the Dreamstone, that's a thing from Dr. Destiny, from another Justice League villain. Yeah,
yep.
Doesn't have anything to do with Cheetah or Maxwell Lord. Actually, Maxwell Lord he doesn't really have powers in the beginning. He has mind powers later, but then they've retconned it. It's a big mess.
Yes.
But
now he's got a son. He's got sun powers.
Oh yeah,
That's power to make you empathize with him.
Exactly.
Because he has a son.
Yeah. Oh. But yeah, it's a shame. It's a big mess, and and the fact that even at the end where Cheetah reverses back to normal, I'm like, oh great, what am I to look forward to for part 3?
Yeah.
Like,
but the thing is, she has no redemption arc because she never renounced her wish. So one assumes that she reverted because Maxwell Lord renounced his wish, which means he no longer has the wish power of the Dreamstone, and therefore all of the wishes he created. He didn't create her wish. The stone did. So I don't know that she's not Cheetah anymore, and they leave it really way up in the air. She does not have an ending in this movie at all.
Yeah.
She isn't in prison. She doesn't. We don't know what happened to her.
Like to your point, because we do see her no longer in Rum Tum Tugger attire, but she is.
Is she a Jellicoe Cheetah?
But eventually, like I would be on board if part 3 is literally her trying to recapture that and being like an entire movie about Cheetah and about like literally Barbara trying to become Cheetah again.
Yep.
Like that, I'm here for that. Like but.
No, that would make sense, because in the comic books, that's how she got her power. She sought out she was, I believe, an archaeologist. And she sought out the god, and that's how she got her powers, by making some sort of deal. Yeah, if I remember correctly, Cheetah's sort of not the end-time Wonder Woman. It's a different theme, where Wonder Woman represents truth and feminism. Cheetah's kind of like the little bit opposite of that, where this is what happened, like kind of like the theme of male domination thinking into modern culture.
Yeah, Cheetah was created as a female dominatrix analog by the guy who created Wonder Woman as a female submissive analog. So that's, and they have kept that sort of feel to her character throughout the entire existence of her, long after the original creator of Wonder Woman was no longer around to make her essentially a bondage victim. In many cases, a willing bondage victim.
Wild history. It is a wild history.
It's a wild history, which is why I say, folks, go look that stuff up. It's a lot of interesting fun.
Yeah, there's a movie out, Marston and the Two Women, I believe it's called.
Something like that. Yeah, Marston's Wonder Woman, I think.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know this movie out, but
bury the lead. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think I agree that the movie has too many tones. I think it also has too many. It also has too many messages and themes. I think the theme of "Be careful what you wish for" is clearly in there because they keep referencing the monkey's paw story, like literally say it's the monkey's paw. They then, around that, for some reason, try to turn that into a truth is good and cheating and lying is bad opening, and then try to shoehorn it in as part of the ending, and it just fails. And in the middle, the subtextual message and the text message in a lot of things Diana says ultimately comes around to the fact that everybody is to some extent a victim, and therefore trying to stop them by killing them is a bad thing. She says it right from the get-go when she says she hates guns. She does everything she can to stop the guys in the mall fight without killing them. She does everything she can to stop because they're being controlled, the Secret Service agents, without killing. She does everything she can to stop Maxwell Lord, who is killing people or allowing people to kill people, and Barbara Minerva, who wants to kill her without killing them. So if you look at everything except the very beginning decathlon or pentathlon scene or whatever the thing is, and the very end with the lasso of truth, the subtextual and textual message of this movie is because people are more often than not victims that lead them to do bad things, we shouldn't do bad things to them. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of down with that. It's really subversive when it comes to comic book movies. But apparently that wasn't the theme they wanted, so they shoehorned in either be careful what you wish for and or cheating and lying is bad, except when you cheat on, with a possessed person that you don't even know.
The implications.
There's
not one person in that room that said, hey, this is a bad idea. Like, no one?
No one. Can you imagine if the story had have been Barbara and Diana were in a budding romantic relationship, and in addition to the fact that she cheats on him, if they had kept the other guy, being possessed as opposed to actually resurrecting Steve Trevor, her reaction to that, they could have gotten so much mileage out of that. It's like, Barbara, you're cheating by bringing back your lover, and you're cheating by having sex with a guy who doesn't know what's happening.
Not to mention, there's, not to mention exploring queer relationships in the 80s is because they existed.
They absolutely existed.
But the intricacies of that and being able to talk about that and being able to explore that and we've come a long way. Yeah, it's not great still, but we've come a long way from the 80s. Yeah. One
other thing I forgot to mention that I kind of liked about this, I would watch the hell out of a Community-like show or a Brooklyn Nine-Nine-like show about the gemology division of the Smithsonian with those characters. They were funny. They were a good part, and with Kristen Wiig in it, because she's funny as hell.
Yeah, she's excellent.
Yeah, no, I highly agree. I think that they did a really good job filling them out with interesting actors. I think that they did a really good job of embodying their characters. I think that they did a really good job of making that a world as opposed to the world that they all traveled in.
Exactly. That was the most realized, believable thing in this entire movie. And I mentioned this in my review. Ashley, you talked about the fact, and Manny too, about how it was too long. And it felt too long. This is a 4-person drama with a couple of other minor characters that are thrown in, but this is Diana, Barbara, Max, and
Steve Trevor.
And Steve Trevor. Thank you.
And Captain Kirk. Yep.
Yeah, and Captain Kirk. As the Tremor brother. And that's it. This is a 4-person drama with 4 action scenes, and and around that, the whatever character development and plot movement that is required of interaction between the characters. This should have been 90 minutes long. And they padded the hell out of it. If you look at the previous movie, you had groups of background characters on both sides, good and bad, that had backstories that were being fleshed out. The doctor with the half mask on the bad guy's side.
Dr. Poison.
Yeah, Dr. Poison. The general on the German general on the bad guy's side, who ultimately was just a pawn for Ares, but still we got to know that character. All of Steve's compatriots in his spy mission group, the poor can't be a sniper anymore, Irishman, the definitely mystical something or other Native American. They all had backstories. They were all interesting characters. Nothing beyond those 4 people. We know nothing about anybody else in this movie, and that shouldn't have been 2 hours and 31 minutes.
Yep. And it, I will say, and I will defend it to my dying day, more montages with Steve Trevor putting on fanny packs.
Okay.
Yes. I will not hey, and these are 2 characters that you mentioned. These are 2 characters as part of that, so there's no reason to cut that. Better not cut those.
As filler, it was some of the most amusing filler I've seen in a long time. And I love the fact, Mr. Krakowian, welcome to the show. I hope DC will consider doing a Plastic Man movie in the future. There has been talk about it. The problem is, the current talk is potentially making a Deadpool-esque R-rated Plastic Man movie, which is what it would really have to be.
Oh. All right.
Talk.
Yeah.
Lots of rumor, speculation. So there's nothing is in development that we've heard about that, but that's what I've heard is being speculated.
If it's anything like this, they'll let them do it, and then in the reshoots, it'll be a G-rated.
Exactly. They'll turn it into Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming up on an hour here, folks. Any last thoughts that we didn't touch on that we want to talk about Wonder Woman 1984?
Yeah, I guess the only other thing that I didn't really state is that I think that they had a wasted opportunity that they kind of took advantage of, which is literally that they don't necessarily want to show male on female violence, and so they had and I think that was a big part of why it was so CGI'd, her fight with Ares in the first one. This one, it was a very real CGI but very real hand-to-hand fight with Cheetah, and I wanted more of those, and I really think that they wasted their opportunity with that, especially if they're not going to pursue that further in a future movie with Cheetah. Just let them fight.
Yeah. Let them fight. What guys, girls, whatever. Let them fight. Mm-hmm. Manny.
Sort of the same lines. Chris, I would love to see that. Yeah, I would love to see more of Cheetah, more of Kristen Wiig. She was great in this. Yeah. I didn't get a chance to say much about that, but yeah, she was fantastic. I usually see her in comedies. I've never seen her in a more serious role like this. At least I may actually go look her IMDb, see what else she has done in case I may miss something. But because I've seen her in Ghostbusters, I've seen her at Bridesmaids, and she was fantastic in that. And seeing her to me, it was very convincing.
Yeah, I agree with both of those observations. And I guess I'll end it we've been kind of dumping on all of the really bad things about here. And again, this isn't a terrible movie. And if you want to be a DC completionist, if you want to be a Wonder Woman completionist, if you like Wonder Woman in action, watch the movie while you've got something else happening. Because you can then because you won't miss, believe me, you're not going to miss anything in any of the character interactions or anything. But the decathlon at the beginning, the fight in the hallway, the road chase in Egypt, those are good action scenes. And watch the early interaction between Barbara and Diana to just get a sense of what a real God, their chemistry is wonderful. Yet what a real relationship between those two might have been if the movie had been allowed to go in that direction. So go watch it. Just don't expect it to be anything that you're going to really remember in any fond way.
The only real quick thing that I will throw out also is I want to see a reshoot and recut of just the moments of the actor from this Hallmark movie thing where it's Jason Mantzoukas. And it's just like him, and then in the end, he's just like, did anyone else lose like a month of their life? Did I do cocaine? Is that what that was? Because I've never done cocaine, and I've just lost a month of my life. My rib is broken, and my passport says I was in Egypt. What happened? Like,
I think that would be hilarious, except that's the reason why they took the jet is because he didn't have a passport.
Oh, that's right, yeah. But yeah.
And again, why would Trevor not have a passport? He had this guy's body.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, real quick thing, if you want to check out really good Wonder Woman stories, this movie definitely won't satisfy that at all. Gail Simone's Wonder Woman,
yes.
Rick Rucka's Wonder Woman,
yep.
George Perez's Wonder Woman, those are fantastic runs.
I would, all of them are great. I would go all the way back to George Perez, who basically reestablished the connection to Greek mythology for Wonder Woman. The reason we had those wonderful Themyscira scenes in the first movie, in Justice League and so on, can be laid right at the feet of George Perez's run in the comic books. So on that note, folks, this is it. This is our last live stream of this horrible, horrible year. God, can we please get a Dreamstone and wish to have this just not have ever happened? And
Rodney, be careful what you wish for.
Oh,
you might end up in the body of somebody you didn't expect.
True. Yeah, yeah, that's right, exactly. I'm gonna wind up losing my empathy or whatever happened to Lord. So join us in 2021, folks, where realistically the structure of these aren't going to change, but I hope we're all going to be a lot happier. So for me, signing out for the entire year, Rodney Brown, thanks for joining all of our shows this previous year and this one, of course, and also for the people who joined on Nerd Week Live on Tuesdays. Thank you very much. Ashley, if you would say goodbye.
Goodbye.
And there we go. Nice and short. And Manny.
Happy New Year, everyone. Stay tuned for our next topic, which is... what's our next week's topic?
Hold on a sec. I've got the document up here. It is...
Bring it up and then throw Rodney under the bus. Yes.
Exactly. It is going to be, folks, the Doctor Who holiday special, which premieres New Year's Day, right?
Yes.
Or December 31st. It's New Year's Day.
Time zone, yeah.
Yeah. Official Yams, welcome to the show, and we're just signing off. So sorry you missed everything, but hey, if it would have been a spoiler for you, you lucked out. We're just saying, tune in. Our next show is going to be back on Thursday, so it'll be January 7th, and it will be on the Doctor Who holiday special, which is going to drop on New Year's Day. So if you watch it and you want to talk about it, see us then. Otherwise, like Manny said, Happy New Year, safe New Year, and, we hate to do this every time we talk about the news, but, delivery of the COVID vaccines is not meeting the goals. It's going to take you a while before you get them. Keep wearing a mask. Keep washing your hands. Keep staying at least 6 feet away from people. And be safe over the New Year's Eve holiday and for the next 6, 8, 12 months.